Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise and get you truly informed quickly.
That's the goal.
And today, we're plunging into something pretty critical. It's been all over the news, maybe causing some anxiety if you're watching social media.
Definitely.
We're looking at the Stylo News Strategic Watchlist, China-Taiwan Strategic Assessment from August 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Because over the last, 36 hours or so, military tensions in the Western Pacific have really, really ramped up.
They certainly have.
It seems like a complex mix, right?
Sure, Jane.
Assertive Chinese actions, these bigger multinational military drills, more U.S. and allied ships out there.
It's a lot happening at once.
So for you, our listener, the big question really hovering over this is, are we seeing a new kind of dangerous normal setting in for the Western Pacific?
Or is it something else?
Or, is this just careful maneuvering before maybe an even bigger flashpoint?
That's a crucial question. And honestly, the near-term outlook, it's definitely defined by, a higher tempo of military activity and persistent legal, diplomatic jostling, and frankly, a very elevated risk of accidental escalation.
Right. Understanding the nuances of this, let's call it new normal, is exactly what we need to unpack today.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Where do we start? Maybe with China's recent strategic move, the legal and diplomatic side.
That makes sense. It sets the stage.
So Beijing just published this legal assessment of the United States Freedom of Navigation Report. Now, you hear legal assessment, it sounds a bit dry, maybe.
It can sound that way, yeah.
But what's the real strategic play here? Is this, just political posturing, or does it genuinely change the legal ground rules in some way?
Oh, it's absolutely more than just political theater. What's really fascinating here is how China is strategically almost weaponizing the legal domain.
Weaponizing law. How so?
Well, this report signals a much more assertive stance. It's designed to increase friction, deliberately, with the U.S. and other regional states.
By doing what exactly? By directly challenging the very foundation, the legal basis the U.S. uses for its naval operations there.
You mean like freedom of navigation?
Exactly. While the U.S. argues for innocent passage through these waters under international law, even for warships.
Which they've done for decades.
Right. China increasingly frames such passages, especially by rivals like the U.S., as infringing on its sovereignty. They see many of these areas as basically internal waters.
So when the report calls U.S. actions gunboat diplomacy, that's part of this framing, using military presence for political pressure.
Precisely. That's exactly how they're framing it for an international audience, trying to paint the U.S. as the provocateur, the one stirring up trouble.
Okay.
And look, this report isn't just words. It's laying down a sort of legal framework from their perspective for future actions that could be more aggressive against foreign naval operations.
So it could be a prelude to them actually trying to enforce their claims more forcefully.
That's the concern. It significantly raises the risk of direct confrontation out on the water.
So for you listening, this isn't just some abstract legal document.
Not at all.
Think of it like Beijing is trying to set new rules of the road, their rules, which could impact everything from shipping lanes and trade to military movements across a huge part of the Pacific.
Absolutely. It's potentially a precursor to very real operational changes.
Yeah.
Changes that could shape the global maritime landscape in a way that, frankly, affects everyone.
Wow. Okay. So while Beijing's making these moves on the legal chessboard, something very real happened on the water recently.
Yes, the Scarborough Shoal incident.
Right, this collision between a PLA Navy warship, the Plan, and a China Coast Guard, or CCG, vessel near Scarborough Shoal.
Mm-hmm.
And what really jumped out at me from the sources was that the Plan warship didn't help its own damaged Coast Guard ship.
That's the striking part.
Instead, it just kept chasing a Philippine Coast Guard vessel. And then, on top of that, China blames the Philippines, even though there's apparently video showing Chinese aggression.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It is. And this incident near Scarborough Shoal is incredibly revealing, actually.
Revealing of what?
It suggests potential internal coordination problems, maybe even operational discord between different parts of China's maritime forces.
Like the Navy and Coast Guard not being on the same page.
Potentially. I mean, think about it. A naval warship built for combat but also rescue, bypassing its own damaged counterpart from the Coast Guard to pursue a rival.
Yeah, that seems odd.
It implies either, conflicting priorities right in the heat of the moment, or maybe even a breakdown in the command structure. Who's calling the shots?
Right.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it clearly shows a willingness to use forceful, high-risk tactics against other claimants in the region, like the Philippines.
So it's not just about one bump at sea. It's about what it tells us about how they operate internally.
Exactly. This apparent lack of assistance, plus the immediate sort of baseless blaming of the Philippines, it seriously undermines regional confidence.
Confidence in what?
Confidence in China's ability, or maybe willingness, to manage these maritime disputes responsibly. And more critically, it significantly boosts the risk of accidental escalation.
How so?
Well, imagine if different Chinese forces have slightly different rules of engagement or communication protocols aren't perfect. A minor incident, a bump, could suddenly spiral into a major international crisis.
Sounds like a tinderbox, really.
It is. A small spark could ignite something much bigger very quickly.
And meanwhile, the Philippines, they're not just taking this.
No, they're not backing down. They've adopted a very public strategy, continued documentation and public release of encounters, basically recording everything and showing the world.
Shining a spotlight, trying to get international support.
Exactly. They're using transparency as a tool.
Okay, so that leads us naturally to the response from the U.S. and its allies. It's been pretty robust, right?
Yes, definitely noticeable.
We've seen more U.S. Navy ships deployed in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait. And the sources mention a 3-carrier presence. That sounds like a lot.
It is a very significant deployment. 3 carrier strike groups in relatively close proximity is a powerful statement.
And what are they doing? Conducting these freedom of navigation operations, FCOAPs, and joint patrols with partners in the region.
Correct. They're actively demonstrating their presence and their interpretation of international law.
It's obviously meant as a clear signal. But for you listening, there's this deeper question, isn't there? Does sending in more firepower actually deter China?
Or does it raise the stakes?
Exactly. Does it, as some analysts worry, actually create more chances for things to go wrong, more opportunities for miscalculation?
That's the constant tension, the core dilemma. These U.S. deployments are strategically designed for essentially 2 main things.
Okay, what are they?
First, deter further Chinese coercion, show strength, push back against their claims. Second, reassure allies, people like the Philippines, Taiwan. Show them the U.S. is committed.
Right, commitment to what?
To upholding international maritime norms. Things like freedom of navigation, freedom of overflight for all nations, principles that China seems to be increasingly challenging.
Okay.
However, and this gets to your point, this increased operational tempo, just having more ships from opposing sides operating closely together, it absolutely undeniably raises the risk of miscalculation, of unintended incidents. It's like a constant high-stakes game of chicken being played out at sea.
Doesn't sound relaxed.
Far from it.
And it's not just the U.S. Navy on its own. We're also seeing bigger military exercises, right? Like Super Garuda Shield.
Yes, the expansion of Super Garuda Shield is very important, headquartered in Jakarta, Indonesia.
And this isn't just a small drill anymore. The sources suggest it's grown quite a bit.
Significantly. It really reflects a deepening security collaboration across the region.
A kind of unified response.
An often unspoken one, yes, but definitely a response to perceived Chinese assertiveness. And Indonesia's role here is key.
Why Indonesia specifically? What does their central role tell us?
Well, Indonesia is a major regional power in its own right. Its willingness to host and lead such a large exercise, bringing in the U.S., but also many other partners, regional and even from outside the region. It underlines Jakarta's commitment to regional stability and, frankly, its growing influence. They're stepping up.
So even if these exercises don't explicitly say we're aimed at China.
Right, they usually don't.
Their sheer scale, the number of countries involved, it sends a message anyway.
Absolutely. It enhances what we call interoperability, the ability of these different forces to work together effectively. And it demonstrates a credible deterrent posture.
So it influences how China calculates things.
It's certainly intended to. It signals a kind of collective pushback, a desire for a more balanced regional security setup, not one dominated by a single power.
Interesting. And talking about regional partners pushing back, let's loop back to the Philippines again. They seem particularly bold in their stance.
They've taken a very forward-leaning approach, yes.
Actively leveraging international attention, like we said. Publicizing these incidents with Chinese ships, asking for international support. Even explicitly considering joint naval operations with the U.S. Now, some might say that's brave, but couldn't it also make them a bigger target for China?
It's definitely a calculated risk they're taking, but this strategy has multiple strategic effects.
Such as?
Well, shining that spotlight increases diplomatic pressure on China. It forces Beijing to respond on an international stage under scrutiny.
Right.
It also encourages the U.S. and other allies to get more involved, which strengthens the Philippines' hand.
But what about the joint operations part? That sounds like a bigger step.
It is. The potential for formal joint U.S.-Philippines operations is a major possible point of escalation.
How so?
It would change the nature of incidents. Instead of just a Philippines vessel versus a Chinese vessel, it becomes potentially a joint vessel or operation involved. That makes crisis management way more complex, brings in international legal obligations.
It basically draws clearer lines in the sand.
It could, yes. Solidify battle lines, so to speak, which complicates things immensely if something goes wrong.
So looking down the road, longer term, what does this all mean for the Philippines? And how does Indonesia fit into this evolving picture?
Well, the expectation is that the Philippines will likely continue down this path, seeking more international support, possibly formalizing those joint operations with the U.S. That strategic alignment will be really crucial to watch.
In Indonesia.
As we discussed, Indonesia is rapidly emerging as a really key security partner, not just for Manila, but for the whole region.
Because of their role in exercises like Super Garuda Shield.
Exactly. And their broader push for a balanced power dynamic. Indonesia is becoming this sort of gravitational center for a more unified regional security posture, resisting dominance by any single power.
Okay. So if we try and bring all these threads together.
Let's try. The picture we started with, elevated military activity, constant legal sparring, it's only gotten sharper through this discussion, hasn't it?
It really has.
The near-term outlook for the Western Pacific is undeniably characterized by this persistent legal and diplomatic contestation, this heightened military activity, and critically, a very real chance of accidental escalation, things going wrong by mistake.
And China's pushing on multiple fronts.
Yes, they're actively confronting the U.S. and its allies, both legally, with reports like the one we discussed, and operationally with actions like those near Scarborough Shoal. It creates a deeply volatile environment.
And this increased density of military hardware, more ships, more planes from all sides while it's meant to deter, it creates a kind of paradox, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, more presence intended for stability could actually, in a tense moment, lead directly to instability. It seems like a very fine line to walk.
It is indeed a very fine line. And the long-term outlook, it unfortunately points towards continued militarization of the region.
Meaning what, specifically?
We anticipate China will likely pursue more assertive enforcement of its maritime claims, trying to make them facts on the water.
And the U.S. response?
Concurrently, the U.S. will almost certainly deepen its security partnerships with regional allies. More exercises, more cooperation, more alignment.
So we could expect to see more phonopes.
Yes, additional freedom of navigation operations, further expansion of joint exercises like Super Garuda Shield, and likely the deployment of even more advanced surveillance and reconnaissance assets, drones, spy planes, satellites by everyone involved.
So just more military gear packed into the same contested spaces.
Essentially, yes. This sort of perpetual motion just creates ongoing tension. The risk of escalation, it doesn't really go away. It remains significant and persistent.
Especially where?
Particularly in those critical flashpoints we keep mentioning. The Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea. Areas where you have overlapping claims and this increased military presence just creates inherent instability.
It sounds like it's not just a possibility of something going wrong, but almost an inherent risk baked into the current situation.
That's a good way to put it. It's almost a byproduct of this ongoing strategic chess match being played out.
Wow, what a complex web we've untangled today. Legal moves, real-world incidents, big multinational responses.
Yeah.
It all defines this current strategic assessment.
It's a lot of moving parts.
And it seems clearer than ever that understanding these nuanced dynamics is just crucial for anyone trying to make sense of global affairs right now.
Absolutely crucial. And maybe, given these escalating legal challenges from China and this packed military presence in these vital waterways, here's a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Okay, leave us with something to think about.
What will be the ultimate test of international maritime law in this region? We talk about norms and rules, but what's the real test going to look like? And maybe more importantly, how will all these nations navigate that incredibly fine line between trying to deter conflict and accidentally stumbling right into an unintended confrontation?
A sobering question.
It's a question that really looms large over the Western Pacific right now. And the answer, whatever it turns out to be, will undoubtedly shape the future of global stability.